This video is about the reconstruction of a historical blockhouse in the Voroberer Coburg Fortress Museum in Ulm. I did the planning, and therefore the role of construction management fell to me. It was a pleasure for me to be able to tackle this unusual project together with the other volunteers of the Förderkreis Bundesfestung Ulm, because you don't get an opportunity like this twice. This video is my personal view of the project. The Förderkreis Bundesfestung has its own, more detailed video series on its YouTube channel. After the ground floor was finished, the wooden framework had to be made. I printed out the plans at a scale of 1 to 10. Each of the over 200 components was listed individually. We had wood delivered from the Harder sawmill in Remmelshofen. I had adjusted the historical beam dimensions so that we could make almost everything from a 16 by 16 centimeter cross-section. With this uniformity and the square profile, there is simply a lot less that can go wrong. The first half-timbered wall was inserted under the temporary roof on the east side of the ground floor. My students did all this work as part of their construction practice week. Despite their lack of carpentry training, they managed to do it really well. I was proud of how quickly they learned and came up with their own solutions. Then came a difficult period. We had to remove the temporary roof early in the year in order to be able to continue building. But we had to make the construction site weatherproof again as quickly as possible. I hoped we could have the final roof completed by fall. It was decided that we would concentrate on the wooden framework and the roof structure with the volunteers, while the remaining masonry work and the roofing should be outsourced to companies. The company Meyer and Madel from Ulm loaned us a construction crane free of charge, and we first installed the ceiling on the ground floor. This is a special feature of fortress technology, because earth would have been piled on top of it in the event of an attack, as protection against bombardment, and it had to be extremely stable. Beams with a cross-section of 32 centimeters by 32 centimeters should be laid side by side without any gaps. 30 pieces, which means a lot of trees. I had the idea to ask the Major of Ulm whether we could get the necessary spruce trunks from the city forest at a reduced price, and I was delighted when he told us that we could even get the trunks free of charge. We had just to organize the sawing ourselves, again at the Harder sawmill. In good spirits, we worked on the necessary joinery. All beams were also primed, here with the help of one of my children. 4 strong posts were erected first. We sawed these from ash logs on site using a band sawmill. The wood came from clearing the fortress area. This idea was again to save money. I like it when you can get timber from your own stock. 2 braces were inserted and top plates were placed. These extend over the entire length of around 10 meters. Then the 30 ceiling beams were set on top.
Jawohl.
2 additional braces were placed on each of the posts in the direction of the beams, creating a very impressive view. You can literally feel the load that the ceiling could carry, estimated at least 500 tons. Now it was time to prepare the remaining timber frames and the roof trusses. The volunteers from the Förderkreis Bundesfestung Ulm really worked hard because they had to prove that they could do it just as well as my students. I learned a lot from this work myself, particularly when it comes to instructions, organization and quality control. Then the race between bricklayers and carpenters began. The bricklayers were supposed to build the walls on 3 sides. We hobby fortress builders should put up the remaining timber frame and the roof structure. The bricklayers got a head start. They built the inner wall shell out of modern bricks and also poured the concrete beam on top. The completion of the concrete beam was our starting point. A few intensive construction meetings were necessary to discuss the procedure. The half-timbered wall on the east side was raised by 1 floor to the height of the concrete beams. 6 posts were then placed on the ground floor ceiling and covered with longitudinal beams.
Langsam ab. Aber frei.
Other timbers were placed on the walls. The 6 posts were now extended upwards for the next level, that of the actual roof structure. According to the original, there are 3 roof trusses, each with 2 posts with slanted struts to the outside. A simple structure like in many barns of the 19th century. Assembling the next frames was more difficult. At these heights, not all the volunteers could keep up because not everyone was free from vertigo. But that didn't matter because there was enough work down below, like picking out the numbered pieces of wood and lifting them with the crane. It was a wonderful coincidence that we even had a real expert among us, carpenter Tobias. Working with him, it was easy for me to manage the setting up in a practical manner, because his advice had weight, and when we both said, "We'll do it this way now," then people trusted us. Finally, the rafters were difficult. When we were building the temporary roof, I had the idea of already using the rafters of the final roof to save costs. The disadvantage was that the rafters had dried out since and were now twisted and warped. But with brute force we managed to get them in place step by step. Then came the topping out ceremony. I wanted to take the opportunity to present the construction history and our motivation for rebuilding the blockhouse, and wrote a poem with no fewer than 122 verses. Because it's not just any project, but something special. It was now late September, and after the roof cladding had been installed, I was very relieved to be able to hand over the construction site to the roofers, namely to the company Dittmar, which has already made the roofs of my own houses. The covering with plain tiles went extremely well and was finished as planned by winter. Again, to save money, I suggested to use the OSB boards from the temporary roof to fill the compartments of the framework. After some hard thinking, we finally had a usable assembly plan. We installed 2 layers of OSB boards in the middle of the wall, so that special boards for holding the plaster can be applied on both sides. Now the blockhouse is finished in essentials. The third step will include interior work, installation of doors and windows, plastering, laying floors, and the installation of many details.